Welcome to the Win-Win Evangelism podcast. My name's Tina Waldrom from Evangelism in Australia. Today I have a fascinating discussion for you. We're talking about reaching the online world, or reaching the world online and face-to-face, a bit of this hybrid approach, and I feel like we could all be encouraged to do this a little bit better. So I'm talking today to church online pastor Steve Fogg from Crossway Baptist Church in Melbourne. He is also, I would suggest, and many around the world, a digital expert. So it's a pleasure to have you. Welcome to you, Steve.
Welcome. Good to see you on this very, very windy day. And I'm so delighted to join you and your listeners and viewers.
It's great to have you along, Steve, and you have such a reputation in this space, so thank you for giving your time. It's a hidden tsunami. You've described this space of online, a hidden tsunami of people. Tell us a little bit about that line and how you see that.
Yeah, so generally, if we're looking at people who are exploring faith, and for all of those, who consume your content, they're passionate about sharing their faith. Or if you're a church leader, you're passionate, you want your church to reach more people for Jesus. One of the things that I think there's a disconnect right now, and it was pre-COVID as well, it's the realization that actually there is more people who are inquiring about the Christian faith online than you could ever possibly reach. And for the average person, we just don't see it because it's not in front of us. But the reality is that people are literally on Google, on YouTube, on their social media channels, looking at content. I call them kind of spiritual stalkers or lurkers, who are just basically reading content, consuming content around the questions that we would normally really be focused on in something like an Alpha course or exploring Christianity course, or maybe in the conversations that you have when you're sharing your faith with your friends. So, for example, Tina, every single month there are around 250,000 searches for who is Jesus. And for those in the Christian bubble, we think everyone knows who Jesus is. But we are very much in a post-Christian world where many people around the world are really just in that kind of first step towards finding out about this person who lived 2,000 a bit years ago. So that's really the opportunity, not just on that one question, but on dozens of questions around both faith generally, Christianity, spirituality, and your church and your community has that opportunity to put content out there to answer those questions. And that's the reality for everyone watching right now. So if you are an average person that attends a church, what you share online determines how people take a step towards Christianity or away from Christianity. How your attitude and your posture, whether you're an angry person or a joy-filled spirit person, can determine and impact those people who are watching. And especially those people who are attending the church, I just say, people are watching how you behave online. People are examining your character, forming an opinion about you by the content that you post. So it's like that old truism, you surround yourself with the most 5 people who you want to be like. That's the reality for those online as well. That's just for that average person. So if you're sharing kind of just really thoughtful Christian apologetics, people are going to actually seriously engage with you and take you seriously. I'm putting my church leader hat back on now. For those who are leading churches, in your community, people are spiritually searching. Just because they're not attending your church or checking your church facility out on a weekend doesn't mean that they're not spiritually searching. But what they can't see for the most part is your church online. And the sad reality is that we as church leaders assume that people are going to walk into our church doors, sit in a pew, and kind of consume a service when they're exploring Christianity. Some people will do that for sure, but for the vast majority of people, the hurdles and barriers, both in their own mind and in their own heart to do that, is quite high. So what a lot of people do in that first step is that they check you out online. And this is kind of the mindset shift I just try to say to every church leader. The vast majority of churches do not realize if you're doing any kind of content online, more people see your church online than attend your church in person. Mm. That's just a huge mindset shift that you've got to go through, where it comes back to what is it that you're sharing online as a church, and what sort of content is that? Is it content for Christians? Is it content for those who are exploring faith? Or is it just a worldview that you're angry at the world and, the world's horrible and a nasty place? What is it that you're sharing? Are you sharing that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life? Or, and that's the reality of all the kind of content, both from a church itself, but also what people are actually searching for, because it's more than we can possibly imagine.
Mm. And Steve, just on that thought, I try to make a habit of having people connect with me on social media that are not Christians. Mm-hmm. So I'm deliberately trying to add people into my social circle, so to speak, that are not non-Christians. Should we be answering those same questions as individuals as well? Like, what are we posting? If people are watching, is that do we need to get a little bit more serious about that?
Look, for some of us, we do. For some of us, they don't even know that you attend a church, or they don't even know that you have a faith. But I would put it like this: whenever you're first meeting someone with a view to dating them, you don't necessarily, invite them out for dinner straight away. You get to know them. So people actually want to get to know you first. They want to understand you, and there's got to be a natural connection that happens. And it's the same online as well. Really, people want to see you, Tina, as the 360 you. They want to see your family. They want to see what you're passionate about. And part of that will obviously be faith. And when we posture ourselves, when we're talking about our faith, it could be that we're sharing our church service online. It could be that we're sharing a thoughtful, considered article, a piece of content online. Or it could be that we're writing our own opinion online as well. But we just need to be really careful when we're writing our own opinion that we're not declaring that someone who's potentially is reading this, who we're writing it for, really we've got to have them in mind versus a Christian audience in mind. And that's really, it doesn't mean that you water down your faith. It's just you approach it like Jesus approached it. He asked more questions and gave more statements. And that's really the challenge for us as followers of Jesus, is that really we need to show our true self. And when we show our true self online, and when we share that content online, people will take those steps. They'll go from kind of disinfected to exploring.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that answer. And it's something to just keep in mind all the time, isn't it? To keep that at the forefront of our lives. So this online church pastor, with all of this expertise that you have, you are now the online church pastor. So what does that look like, and what do you proactively do to reach those that are outside the existing faith community at your church?
That's a really, really good question. We're very fortunate in the online space that actually a lot of the social media channels do some of that work for us. If we just take our services on the weekend, at Crossway we have 4 services through the weekend for our online campus. So we treat our online campus as an actual location. It is it's not just a broadcast of one of our locations. My role is to help disciple people in their faith, both as a pre-Christian and also as they take the steps into faith. So, for example, this week, one person who has been watching online, tomorrow I'm going to start reading the Bible with her. And that's just one example where she's connected through online. And she said she's interested in Christianity. I said, hey, I'm looking for someone to read the Bible with. Would you be interested? That connection has happened all online in a Facebook message chat. We're using technology to facilitate ministry. Okay, that's just a really granular way. I'll give you another story. We had a lady that started watching our Crossway online services who was a Christian beginning of last year, so 2023. She connected, started attending Crossway online. She stepped into service because she had some health issues. She wanted to stay online. And she was now one of our online hosts, so they ministered to people in our chat during our services. She was challenged through a webinar that Pastor Dale, our senior pastor, started, which was how to disciple your friends to Jesus. She was challenged to read the Bible with her boss the very next day, and she asked him. He said yes. What a brave person to do that with her boss, right? He said yes. Fast forward to last August, a couple of months later, Mike made a decision to attend an Alpha course at one of our physical locations. And Mike did the Alpha course, became a Christian. I now see Mike most weekends at Crossway in Burwood. He's one of our serving team members here, and I had the joy and privilege to baptize him just a little bit over a month ago. And so he's gone that full journey, going from online and through a kind of a hybrid situation with someone that attends online, sharing their faith, to now basically following Jesus, attending church regularly. His world is completely different to what it was 18 months ago. And they're just a couple of examples. I've got tons of examples. But really, the big thing I want to encourage you with is that technology can facilitate ministry. Technology can facilitate people learning about Jesus for the very first time. And for me as an online campus pastor, basically, like any church pastor, we want to take people in a discipleship journey. We want to take people, both who are pre-Christian and Christian, deeper into a faith journey. That's my job. It's very much a people job versus a technology job. While I do a lot of technology and I love technology, that's not my main thing in this role. My main thing in this role is to help people take steps of faith, is to step people into Christian community, to help people to serve, to help people to live a life of generosity. And we're good Baptists, so we love people to become members of our church as well. So we've changed our constitution as a church, which was a long process, to include our online viewers to become part of our membership. And we've got people joining every single week our online membership. So that's just kind of the pastor's hat, if you like. But predominantly, I really want to encourage you, if you're a pastor watching, and maybe you're streaming some of your content, go, and especially on YouTube, you can see the stat. In YouTube Studio, for us, I know, and it will be the same for you, the vast majority of people that watch your content see it for the first time. What is it that you want to say to them? And how does that change the way you communicate? Because that's the reality and the mindset that most pastors are in. It's like everyone's coming to church on a Sunday. They come, they know us, they know all our inside jokes. But for online, they don't. And they've got tons of questions. And again, just some of those questions that I talked about. Who is Jesus? Why did Jesus die? Does God exist? Like really existential kind of alpha type questions. Is the Bible reliable? Why do bad things happen to good people? And they're very much different types of questions. And that's just some of the joy that I get to engage with people about those questions online as a online campus pastor at Crossway.
Yeah, outstanding. And Steve, what I really hear, well, I'm hearing a lot, but one of the things that going back just a few moments ago was whether they're coming to church in the building or whether it's online, there seems to be a clear pathway of some type of approach or system, so to speak, of moving people forward on this discipleship journey, which is a great question to ask. Let me just ask you that around that a bit more in the online, even though you might give us some similar answers, because what is that? What is this approach, like taking someone from A, moving them along? Because I'm sure that I personally could duplicate that in my own individual world.
Yep, 100%. Yeah, look, I mean, the reality is that everybody can do that. We say at Crossway, everybody gets to play the mission of God in the hands of ordinary people like you and like me. And part of that online, you'll hear me, if you attend Crossway Online, you'll hear me bang on that about every week when we start our broadcast, is that everyone can at least share the service. And like, that's just a small thing. We get around 150 people just on YouTube every week sharing our services. And that's, you know, a wide range of content. Some of that will land in people's hearts, some of it won't. But when I encourage people to share it directly with a friend, you can share it on your social media channels too. But really, that's just the start of being brave and putting a little bit of yourself out there. Generally, people will share it at the end of the service when they know what the content is. Versus,
Right.
like, I mean, look, if we put our in-person hat on, right, I'm sure you've been at church when you go, this message would have been perfect for so-and-so. But you could, you walk out of church and go, this would have been perfect. The beautiful thing about online is it can be, because all you have to do is share it, right? And that's one very small kind of example of that movement thinking. So again, we think movement, not just the moment. And really, we think about people who are pre-Christian becoming Christians, and it's not one line. We realize it's kind of a bit of a spaghetti mess. People who are taking steps into community, reading the Bible, they're becoming members. They're living a life of generosity. They're actually helping us reach more people online by tithing. They're becoming members. And they're not just being disciples, they're being disciple makers. But like I shared that story about Jen, for example, that they're sharing their faith in a very real and tangible way. So while we have a large group of people who watch us online, we don't necessarily we record the stats and we look at the stats. That's not our sole indicator. Really, my role is just to help keep moving people along. And really just keep poking them and reminding them in the side in a very nice English way that I can. Hey, have you considered this next step that you can take?
Right. And so if a church has or an individual has a group of people that they're engaging with, maybe it's a private group, like you mentioned, obviously there's a group that come together that are watching online that they can join a Facebook group, because you're obviously then connecting with them. What do you do when people like something or that you can see that they're engaging? What's the next step that you take?
Yep. So on Facebook, for example, yes, and again, we have people who meet on Zoom, meet on Google Meet in Facebook Messenger, so you can broadcast to a group. In Facebook Messenger, for example, they pop up on their screens and they chat. So all different types of ways that people can facilitate technology to meet as a group. In terms of helping people connect and take that first step, what a lot of people don't realize is there's an opportunity for you as the church, whether you're someone on the volunteer team or someone in the leadership team. When someone engages with your content and you don't know them, so they may like something, they may share something, you can go ask them a question. You can check out the story. So what I do as the church online pastor at Crossway, I send them a direct message. And I say, and again, they've just done a like, right? But I don't know them. And I'll say, hey, I'm Pastor Steve. I'm the online campus pastor here at Crossway. I saw that you engaged with our content or service. I'd love to get to know you and learn more about your story. I'd love to hear from you. God bless, Steve. And 90% of people who see that message, reply. So think about that for a moment. All of a sudden, those people who've never attended your physical church, but they may have engaged with a piece of content or maybe your service online, all of a sudden are being drawn into a conversation to take a next step. Versus what we do with in-person church, we'll have a visitor moment in the service and say, if you're new, you can go to the welcome foyer, and we expect them to traipse out there, be brave, and get their free coffee mug or whatever it is, or their free coffee. It's a kind of similar sort of moment, but I'm not relying on them to take the steps. What I'm doing is being proactive and reaching out to them. And what churches can fall into that trap is a similar sort of thing where we're expecting people to come to us. And the reality is that most people won't fill out a contact form on your church website. I'd say it's like 0.002%. And if you're waiting for that person, God bless you, but you're going to be very bored very quickly. So we call this outward bound communication versus just waiting for that inward bound communication. And that's what it is. It's my Monday is generally filled up with this sort of follow-up where I'm just basically sending about 200 people messages. And I've got a template. Forgive me if you're watching and you receive this message, but I've got a templated movement of messages where I'm trying to help someone take a next step. And, sometimes someone will respond in one day. Sometimes it will take a month for them to get back. Sometimes it will take a couple of weeks. The cool thing about online, though, Tina, this is the thing I love, is that as opposed to when someone comes to you on, your welcome area, and it's kind of that social awkwardness. People don't know you. So everyone's, how you going? Good. Yeah, that's good. What are you doing? Online, people will bare their souls to me. People have told me their deepest, darkest challenges that are going on in their life because there's no social barrier to them not doing it. So they know I'm a pastor. They've seen me on the screen, and I've introduced myself as the pastor. People are really brutally honest. And some people have shared some really challenging backstories that they're going through. And it just allows us to pray and minister to them and help them get help where they've needed to get help. And that's the cool thing about what we call micro messaging. And that's really the concept that I'm talking about, is you as the leader, and it predominantly on Facebook, you can send someone a direct message from you, not the church page.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I'm seeing the same. I love doing that with, just creating groups for people online to be a part of, and just having communication and then inboxing people. And people are very open and people are so spiritual, Steve. People really want to have a spiritual conversation. I love the fact that you have come to this position of, we want both. We want to take a hybrid approach of online and face-to-face. How do you summarize that yourself when you talk about this hybrid approach?
Yeah, so hybrid church is really where it's at, right? So just because someone started online, we don't necessarily want them to stay online. For some people, there may be good reasons why they stay online. But the vast majority of people, we want them to relate and connect with people. So for some of them, it will be in the online groups. And we're moving to a model where we actually do want people, if they're in the same geography, to actually catch up with people. And there is something great about actually sitting across the coffee table, having a cup of coffee with someone. So we recognize that. But in terms of hybrid, it really starts, if we're looking at a church service, it really starts with what we call getting out of the aquarium church mindset. And what that means is that, Tina, it means that when I'm watching your service online, it doesn't feel like I'm tapping the glass, wanting to be let into the room. Mm-hmm. What it means is that I'm being welcomed online. So, when you start your worship bracket, it's like, hey everyone, welcome to church. You know, you might say, let's all stand in the room. But then online, you might say, hey, for everyone who's watching online, welcome. Why don't you turn up the volume and stand where you are? Okay, so it's just that little moment. It's just that little shift. And we do that throughout our service, whether it's worship, whether it's communion, whether it's a host spot. So the host will welcome everybody in the room, say, hey, go chat to someone. And then they'll turn to the camera and say, and if you're watching online, dive into the chat and let Pastor Steve know where you're watching from. We would love to connect with you. So again, it's a 10-second statement. Takes nothing away from the in-room comment. Then our preaching will be hybrid preaching. So what does that mean? It means we're preaching to the room. So this weekend just gone, Fiona Hall was preaching, and she preached a evangelistic message, okay, with a first time kind of response, come to Jesus kind of moment, and it was preaching to the room. So I'm going to give you a chance to respond both in the room but also online. She specifically talks to online, and then she gives people a chance to respond in the room. So in a moment, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand if you want to commit your life to Jesus for the very first time. And online, I want you to type into the chat yes or why or whatever it is in the chat, or raise your hand if they're on the church online platform. And people do. So because you're acknowledging both audiences, people feel seen and heard, and people respond. Right. So we had people who put their trust in Jesus for the very first time online. And just like in person, we had people across the weekend doing that as well in person. Some of them will take a step and they'll make themselves known, and then you can engage with them. Some of them won't, and that's just the case online as it is in person. Crossway is quite a large church, so we have about 1,000 people in person. So sometimes people do purposely slip away. They don't want to engage with a team member. It's the same online as well. Some channels are easier to follow up than others. But if I know on Facebook, for example, 2 people said yes to Jesus for the very first time on Facebook this weekend, I can micro-message them, which I did in the service. And so that conversation now starts. So that's what hybrid looks like in the service context. And every church can do that. It's not hard to do that. Now, if you're a pastor listening, the big side benefit to this is that it lifts the vision of your church. It really changes the mindset of your church congregation, the in-person congregation, to go, we are having a bigger impact than just the however many people in the room. So I just want to encourage you, when you do that, to have that in mind. You can share that with your congregation. We are reaching more people online. More people are watching our content online than probably sitting in the congregation. Go check out your YouTube channel if you're broadcasting to YouTube. Often I'll say to a church of 150, 200 people, how many people are watching your services on a weekend? Often there are more people who have watched their content than who have attended.
Incredible.
But they've not created any kind of engagement with those people who are watching.
Yeah.
But that's the big challenge.
Yes, it's a big challenge. Well, this has been a fascinating discussion. Steve, I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours and hours. I'm sure this has been helpful for you. I feel inspired and challenged at the same time. In the show notes, I'm going to have all the information so you can stay connected to Steve at stevefogg.com, but also all the connections there to Crossway Church in Melbourne, Victoria, Australia as well. And you can connect with Steve, and I understand that Steve even coaches a lot of people in this space and pastors and stuff. So stay connected if this has been helpful for you, and search Steve out. So Steve, what a great conversation. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.